Under Elizabeth I, there was no official English government support for colonization. The Queen felt that dividing any of the nation's precious resources would weaken England at a time when the nation could ill afford any threat, be it internal or external. Any attempts at colonization must be a private enterprise, with the wealthiest citizens using their own resources to explore and settle in the name of the monarch and her country. Although no public funds supported the earliest colonization efforts, there was still something of a nationalistic drive to settle distant lands. In some way, colonization became an issue between Protestant England and Catholic Spain to claim land and converts for their religious affiliation. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I granted Sir Walter Raleigh the monopoly for settlement in America. This royal permission was necessary, since trying to accomplish this kind of task outside of the boundaries could have constituted treason. There was a real fear that rich nobles would try to form independent nations in the New World. The land Raleigh was to settle was in the territory of Virginia, the name given to all English territory in North America in honor of Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen. There was a larger purpose to the settlement of the American colony at Roanoke. The intent was for the colony to be a base for privateering, government-sanctioned piracy, against Spanish shipping. The settlement of the Roanoke colony actually occurred over 3 separate attempts. The first and second were military-style campaigns that netted quite a bit of information, but brought the Englishmen and natives of the region into violent conflict. The area selected by Raleigh's team, the Queen never actually allowed him to leave England, was already inhabited by people before the settlers ever arrived. The natives of the Outer Banks were Algonquin-speaking people who lived in permanent to semi-permanent villages of about 100 to 200 people. They were not nomadic, but fished, hunted, and cultivated crops, including tobacco and sassafras. They had a stratified society with an elite family or clan at the top, and other families arranged in a hierarchical structure. They had a keen sense of justice, based on a system of restitution between clans and tribes that kept a balance between neighboring people that mitigated unnecessary violence. Their religious system was based on superstition and animism, with a strong belief in magic that was not much different from many 16th century Europeans. Much of what we know of these people came from 2 individuals who were on the first 2 voyages, and spent a great deal of time gathering and recording information regarding these people. Thomas Harriot wrote his findings and impressions as he learned more about what they found in North America, and John White recorded visual representations of the Algonquin people in a series of drawings that depicted many aspects of Native American life and culture. The first prospective colonists of Roanoke made several important mistakes that would profoundly affect the potential for success of the colony. Some were a product of the culture, others from a lack of understanding, but all contributed to the ultimate failure of the first settlement in the Virginia colony. First, it was common practice in Elizabethan times for the man with the highest social standing, regardless of ability or experience, to take leadership. This might have worked if they were dealing with circumstances with which they had some knowledge, but this was not the case with the American colonization. Second, the site chosen for the Roanoke colony was not the best choice to accomplish one of their primary goals, privateering. The Outer Banks are located in relatively shallow water, which meant that large ships could not anchor near the colony. When they brought supplies or were just standing ready to raid Spanish ships, vessels had to anchor several miles offshore, where they were at the mercy of the Atlantic and too far away to reach quickly. Third, and perhaps most importantly, most of the men who were sent to Roanoke in 1585 were soldiers, fresh from the brutality of Irish colonization, where violence was the order of the day, and natives were treated as a problem to be eradicated. By the end of the second attempt at settlement, the Englishmen were hungry and in constant fear of attack from hostile native tribes. Into this environment came one of the most important people who would push to settle mainland North America and contribute to our understanding of the colony. In 1589, Richard Hakluyt the Younger published The Principal Navigations, Voyages, and Discoveries of the English Nation. In it, he chronicled some observation on Virginia and provided his readers with a rationale for continued efforts at settlement. He claimed their goal was a peaceful settlement of a colony that would increase the wealth of the nation through agricultural efforts and religious conversion of the natives, in contrast with that of Spanish conquest. He offered several suggestions on how this could best be accomplished, which the English leaders of the day ignored. By the time the third expedition began in 1587, this one made up of families, many began to doubt the value of the colony. John White was convinced of its importance and gathered more support for the journey, and was among the colonists when the ship departed from England. In Virginia, natives began to resent the previous English settlers constantly begging for food and supplies. They were subsistence farmers, and usually only produced what they needed to survive in any given year. This created tension even before the colonists arrived in the summer of 1587. Shortly after the English families arrived, John White celebrated with his family at the birth of his granddaughter, named Virginia Dare, on August 18, 1587. She was the first English child born in North America and seemed to be a promise of better things to come. Just 9 days later, John White left Roanoke to return to England for supplies and to gather more support. Unfortunately, international politics would prevent his return for almost 2 years. In 1588, the threat from the Spanish Armada kept all shipping close to the English coast. Once the Armada was defeated, a resupply expedition began, but needed to turn back to England because of equipment issues. The needed people and supplies were finally sent in 1589. When they arrived at Roanoke, the colony had vanished. Only the word Croatoan was carved on a post as a signal to those who arrived. No one has yet solved the mystery of the missing Roanoke Island colonists. There are theories, but no conclusive evidence exists as to what happened to the men, women, and children John White left on the shores of Roanoke Island in 1587. It would be many more years until the English would again look to North America in an effort at permanent colonization. After Raleigh's failed efforts, no one would again attempt to personally fund a settlement in the New World. It was just too expensive, the venture having nearly ruined the courtier financially. In 1603, Elizabeth I died. Her cousin, King James VI of Scotland, became King James I of England. His relationship with the Queen's former favorite was tense, and within a short time, Raleigh found himself accused, tried, and convicted of treason. His life was spared, but the conviction negated his patent to settle in Virginia, leaving the opportunity open for later adventurers.